You're 19, scrolling job listings at your kitchen table. One nuclear outage post starts at $24.98 per hour. At the top, a senior reactor operator pathway lists $191,000 per year in total compensation eligibility. The national median for nuclear power reactor operators is $122,610 per year. A bachelor's degree isn't universal. Training, medical clearance, examinations, and plant experience are. The first win is smaller. Security clears your name, and an access badge prints. That badge opens the outer gate, not the reactor controls. Between those doors, you carry heavy temporary barriers through protected corridors before sunrise, qualify on plant systems during supervised field walkdowns, survive a full simulator alarm drill without losing your procedure step, operate the control board under an active facility license, then authorize the shift from the supervisor desk after every independent check. This is every level of a power plant operator's career in America. If you like breakdowns of how careers actually progress, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Level 1. The badge line. You report before sunrise with steel toe boots, safety glasses, a hard hat, and a blank clipboard. APSEG posting pays $24.98 to $28.16 per hour. Your first assignment is not operating anything. Use stage equipment, install temporary barriers, check work documents, and restore the area after the crew leaves. The badge reader chirps, the turnstile unlocks, and warm industrial air replaces the cold parking lot. Ventilation hums above steel grating while radios crackle through hearing protection. The pre-job brief covers the task, hazards, stop points, and the person allowed to change the plan. You repeat the assignment correctly, so the supervisor sends you inside instead of back to the trailer. Small win. Your clipboard now carries the same work package as everyone else's. You compare the barrier location with the document, mark the floor, and unroll the tape. A cart blocks the protected path, so you stop and call the conflict instead of dragging it aside. The crew loses a minute. The path stays open. At the radiological boundary, you check protective clothing, access requirements, and the posted sign marked R circa A. You carry material, hold doors, count tools, sweep debris, and learn which shortcuts are not shortcuts. One loose item reaches the grating edge, and your glove catches it before it disappears below. The technician beside you gives one nod. You stop checking the clock. Then it's quiet again. At turnover, you restore the area, return the radio, and sign the housekeeping line. The pay stub still begins with $24.98 per hour. The badge opens more doors now, but the next one needs demonstrations, signatures, and an oral board. That is Level 2. Level 2. The qualification card. You enter a paid operator training program, and the documented nuclear starting rate is $90,730 per year. At TVA, the documented progression runs 12 to 18 months before the field roll. The desk holds system drawings, a qualification card, a flashlight, a radio, a valve wrench, and a respirator bag. None of them help if you cannot trace the system. You follow a line from a tank, through a pump, across a valve, into a heat exchanger, and back again. The instructor covers one label with a hand, and you identify the component from the pipes around it. Because the answer is right, the first signature lands on the card. It is only ink. It changes what you may touch. Classroom mornings become plant walkdowns, where clean diagrams turn into insulated pipes, overhead cable trays, and identical hand wheels serving different systems. You find the real pump, verify the tag, read the local gauge, and compare it with the drawing. You point at the wrong valve during a demonstration, so the evaluator closes the card and walks you upstream. You retrace the flow. The second attempt is correct, and the card reopens. That correction prevents you from memorizing the wrong plant. The hiring gate may include the POSS selection test, but the daily gate is identify, verify, manipulate, document. A Department of Energy workforce report drew on 42,800 business representatives, yet none can sign this card for you. Michael Johnson entered through Navy nuclear training and reactor startup work, then carried that discipline into civilian energy work. His route proves the ladder has more than one entrance. You stop asking which valve is which. You start explaining what changes when it moves. During the oral board, evaluators ask where pressure goes after a pump trip and which indication should move first. The last evaluator signs the bottom line. Your supervisor hands you a route sheet instead of another study guide. Level 3 begins where a wrong answer becomes a real equipment condition. Level 3. The plant floor. You qualify as an assistant unit operator, and the documented nuclear rate is $120,970 per year. The money arrives before the glamour. Your shift begins with turnover, a route sheet, a radio, a flashlight, hearing protection, and a valve wrench. You walk pumps, fans, tanks, condensers, electrical boards, and local control stations. You read pressure, temperature, level, vibration, leakage, and equipment position, then write everything down. Stable equipment is still work, because the value comes from noticing when stable stops. The outgoing operator points to a pump that sounded different overnight. You listen near the bearing housing, compare the local indication with the route sheet, and feel vibration through the handrail. The reading is expected, the sound is not. You radio the control room and describe the change without inventing a diagnosis. Because you report the condition cleanly, maintenance receives a useful starting point and the plant increases monitoring. The pump stays available. That is the first win. The next evolution is a local valve alignment. You read the procedure, verify the component label, point to the valve, and wait for the peer check. A nearby hand wheel looks identical, but its label differs by one character. You reach toward the wrong one. The peer check stops your glove before it closes around the wheel. Nothing moves. That is the crisis. In this job, the best emergency is a hand suspended in midair. You step back, read the entire tag aloud, and trace the connected pipe before trying again. The correct valve turns hard, then breaks free. The control room confirms the expected indication, so the evolution continues without improvisation. The mistake never reaches the equipment. The lesson does. Heather Madison entered nuclear operations skeptical and kept asking questions until assumptions stopped running the work. You use the same habit during a chemical tank inspection. The level glass matches the route sheet, but a faint stain sits below the fitting. You document it. Because the leak enters the work system now, it becomes planned maintenance instead of an unplanned discovery later. You stop touching anything before the peer check. One night, the control room requests a local indication during a developing equipment issue. You reach the correct panel without checking the map, read the value, repeat it, and hear the acknowledgement. Small win. Your root knowledge has become plant knowledge. Then it's quiet again. You finish rounds, close the work package, and circle one condition for the incoming operator. The next promotion removes the distance between you and the consequences. Level 4 happens in a simulator designed to expose hesitation before the real plant ever has to. Level 4. The simulator. You enter initial license training and one current pathway lists $68.09 per hour. The classroom replaces route sheets with reactor theory, thermodynamics, technical specifications, abnormal procedures, and emergency procedures. Field walkdowns continue, but now every pump and valve connects to a control room indication you must predict. The full-scope simulator matches the control room closely enough to expose every bad habit. Panels stretch across the room, enunciators wait above the boards, and procedure binders sit within reach. An instructor begins with a normal turnover. You verify plant status, review scheduled work, check reactivity conditions, and take the board. One alarm sounds. You acknowledge it, identify the affected system, open the procedure, and assign the first check. A second alarm arrives before the first clears. But the crew stays on the same page. Because everyone keeps place, the room remains organized. The licensing path sits under Title 10, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 55. The reactor operator written examination carries 75 questions and requires 80%. Today's test is different. The instructor removes a feed source and waits to see whether you chase alarms or protect the plant. One expected indication fails to appear, the crew checks the wrong panel, and several seconds disappear. The simulator freezes. No equipment is damaged. Your sequence is. You restart, assign one operator to the procedure, one to the board, and one to field confirmation. The same failed indication now changes the crew's path immediately. Because the diagnosis is faster, the recovery action lands before the scenario compounds. The instructor lets the clock run. That is the win. You file NRC Form 398 for personal qualifications and NRC Form 396 for medical certification. Matthew Marzano qualified as a senior reactor operator for the VC summer project, then worked on digital upgrades at Braidwood. His path shows that a license can open work beyond one control room. You stop hearing the simulator as theater. The examiner eventually closes the folder. Passing does not make the board easier, it makes the board yours. Level 5 begins when the simulator door opens and the real control room does not reset. Level 5. The controls. You take the licensed reactor operator seat, and one posting lists $69.80 per hour starting pay. The board holds switches, meters, recorders, annunciators, communication panels, procedure binders, and the shift turnover log. The job is building one plant picture from thousands of small indications. You begin with turnover, walking the board, reading the log, checking scheduled work, and challenging anything that does not match. A breaker is tagged out for maintenance. Because you catch it before the brief, the planned evolution is rewritten around available equipment. Quiet save. The crew avoids building a procedure around a false assumption. The evolution starts with purpose, expected indications, hold points, and the action that stops the work. The field operator repeats the component label by radio. You match it against the procedure, the peer checker confirms the switch, and your hand makes the authorized move. Pressure changes first. Flow follows. The annunciator stays dark. Because the plant answers in the expected order, the crew continues. A field study collected 560 paired ratings of operator alertness and workload across rotating shifts. Another study interviewed 25 operators about alarm load, task complexity, communication, and continuous shift work. The findings have a physical shape: fluorescent light, cold coffee, and a board that barely changes. The risk is attention thinning during stability. One annunciator flashes during low workload. You acknowledge it, identify the system, check the first out indication, and call the field. The local operator reports a different equipment sound. You open the abnormal procedure before the second alarm arrives. The plant does not care that the room was quiet. One indication conflicts with the others. You treat the conflict as information, so the team checks the transmitter before moving equipment. A bad signal never becomes a bad manipulation. The alarm clears after the instrument channel is isolated under procedure. The unit stays stable. Small win, large consequence. ONET reports that 91% of surveyed reactor operators rate exactness at the highest importance level. Dennis Mosby moved through engineering officer qualification, senior shift supervision, and cold senior reactor operator shift supervision. His progression is a sequence of controlled handoffs. You stop looking at the board one gauge at a time. Then it's quiet again. You complete the log and brief every unresolved condition in plain language. Level 6 begins when the entire shift waits for your authorization. Level 6. The signature. You qualify as a senior reactor operator or operations shift supervisor. One pathway lists $191,000 per year in total compensation eligibility, including a 15% target bonus. The pay is visible. The authority is written. Your desk holds technical specifications, risk reviews, clearance packages, operating procedures, the shift log, and the emergency plan. You review plant status before maintenance begins. A pump is needed for defense in depth, so the planned outage moves to another window. Because you protect available equipment, several crews change plans without weakening the plant. They dislike the delay. They still work the safer sequence. You chair the brief. The reactor operator states the expected response, the field operator confirms local conditions, and maintenance identifies the protected boundary. You ask what stops the job. The room answers from the same document. Then you sign. The senior written examination carries 100 questions, including 25 senior-only questions. The harder test is being the final person, who must say yes, no, continue, or stop. An abnormal condition begins with a call from the board. You enter the control room, read first out indications, confirm the active procedure, and assign independent checks. The crew starts talking faster. You slow the sequence. One operator wants to reposition equipment immediately, but the procedure requires verification first. You hold the manipulation, send the field check, and compare the result with technical specifications. Because the condition remains inside the allowed response path, the crew acts deliberately, and the indication returns to normal. Small win. The event closes without improvisation. Vinny Pasalacqua, a senior reactor operator at Sequoia, is documented authorizing clearances as part of the job. That action is the level in one verb. Authorize. You wake before the alarm, and the shift log is already open in your head. Requalification still brings written examinations, operating tests, and simulator crews back through the same hard rooms. The license does not end training. It makes training part of the job. At turnover, the incoming supervisor asks one question and your answer is already marked in the log. The plant is stable, the crew is aligned, and the meaning of the ladder appears after you step away from the board. Final beat. The open door. At the beginning, the access badge only proved that security had cleared your name. It opened the outer gate, and nothing more. You carried barriers, counted tools, and signed a housekeeping line for $24.98 per hour. Later, the badge opened the training building, then the plant floor, then the simulator corridor. Eventually, it opened the control room door. The climb looks financial from outside. It begins at $24.98 per hour and can reach $191,000 per year in total compensation eligibility. Inside the plant, the climb is measured differently. First, someone checks your work. Then someone asks for your reading. Then an entire crew waits for your authorization. The tools change less than expected. There is still a radio, a flashlight, a procedure, a log, and a pen. The work changes because consequences gather around your decisions. A temporary barrier once defined the edge of your assignment. A clearance package now defines the edge of everyone else's. The cost of the climb is one accepted sentence. Rotating shifts teach the body a calendar that ordinary life does not use. The return is equally concrete. You know why the alarm matters, where the field operator stands, and which page keeps the crew ahead of the plant. You do not become fearless. You become procedural. That is more useful. The quiet stretches no longer feel empty because you know what stable equipment should sound like. The loud moments no longer feel random because the crew has rehearsed the first move. A new temporary worker arrives with clean gloves and a stiff access badge. Their pay stub begins with $24.98 per hour. You sign the authorization that lets their crew begin, then return to the shift log. The same badge format hangs from your pocket. The printed title is different. At shift end, you place it beside the signed clearance and turn off the desk lamp. The control room door closes behind you. Tomorrow morning, the badge opens it again, and the room is yours to enter.